Good evening, everyone. Tonight is January 26, 2022. This is a meeting of the Gloucester School Committee, and I'll call this meeting to order. I just want to make the statement that consistent with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. If you are calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you are watching on a computer or device, there is a raise hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized to speak. And for the record, I just want to say who is here. We have Maria Puglisi, our recording secretary, Greg Bach, our assistant superintendent, Katie Provost, our special education director, Superintendent Lummis, Amy Cam, who is our mental health coordinator, Keith Minio, school committee member, Melissa Texera Prince, school committee member, myself, Kathy Clancy, Laura Wiesen, school committee member, Bill Melvin, school committee member, Mayor Greg Verga, also a school committee member when he's with us at this forum, and Gary Frisch, the school CFO. And all that said, I would like you to join me in the salute to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kathy, sorry to interrupt. You just want to say for the record that I'm here virtually.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you very much. Samantha Watson is joining us virtually today.
Thank you.
The next,
Can I just, if someone could send me another link, the one I have seems to not be a participant link.
Oh, yeah. I just promoted you to a panelist.
Great, thank you.
all right. Well,
Okay.
okay. So the next order of business is oral communications, and I will read the rules on oral communication. The public shall have the opportunity at every regular school committee meeting to be heard under oral communications. Oral communications shall allow any resident who has a request or complaint of any nature relative to the school committee business to appear before the school committee, state their problem without debate, and the matter may be referred to the proper subcommittee. For items that are on the agenda, members of the public may address the committee with permission of the chair. Persons speaking under oral communication shall be limited to 3 minutes each and shall submit a copy of their prepared communication to the recording secretary. The school committee chair shall not allow complaints as to individual performance or character. So if there are any members of the public that would like to speak under public comment, now is the time to raise your hand or hit *9. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the recognitions. Anybody have any recognitions they would like to bring up? Okay, quiet times. Okay, sorry. All right. I do not believe we have a student advisory council member present this evening. So we will wait till next meeting to get a report on Gloucester High School. Next item of business is the consent agenda. Are there any items people want to remove from the consent agenda for discussion? I assume we want to remove the approval of the out-of-state field trip for the JROTC to Daytona, Florida, for discussion of some of the questions we had at the last meeting.
So I'll give you an update, but won't be approving it quite yet. Because we haven't haven't finalized the protocols for what should happen. A couple updates though. One question was it $12,000 per student? Pretty sure it wasn't that. It wasn't that. It's for the whole cost of the whole program. There are going to be 11 students total. So we're feel quite good about having one chaperone. And in terms of COVID, as the committee raised and wanted me to follow up on, we are now working. I met with Master Sergeant DeBose quickly, and also James Cook, Principal James Cook about it. We're working on what to do, what to plan for and prepare for in the case that a student or more gets COVID during the trip, okay? So we'll report back to you at the next meeting, okay, about that, with decisions, looking at additional chaperone, looking at what we would, how we would communicate with parents, be clear about any responsibilities they may have. In addition, just in case the child comes down with COVID, we want to be sure that anything we put in place doesn't exclude any families from actually going or already hoping to go. So those are some of the things we're looking at. But essentially, the biggest question is if a child gets COVID while there, they can't travel back, obviously, by plane or by the charter bus. So they have to stay there longer, and then obviously making precautions for or preparations for food stay. Again, that could be additional chaperone. But we're working through the details and I'll come back to you in next meeting.
Okay, so that is removed from the consent.
I move that we approve the consent agenda minus.
Second.
We need to take a vote, and Melissa tells me because we're all present.
No, with.
Oh, with Sam there. Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote. Maria, please.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Verda,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Reason,
Yes.
and Chairperson Clancy.
Yes. Okay. Consent agenda is approved. The next item of business is deliberations on educational issues and the superintendent's report. And the first item is an update on district-wide social emotional learning and mental health support by Amy Camp.
Can I introduce? Okay, most everyone in the room and on the call here knows Amy Cam, longtime staff member, colleague, leader in district. One of the few things I've done right so far, probably at the top of the list is cajoling and convincing Amy to take on a new position this year, which is Director of Mental Health Support and Social Emotional Learning across the district. You're going to hear tonight what she's been able to do in a very short amount of time to really put us on a, well, first of all, rapidly sort of improve and coordinate our service and support, but also really put on us a path towards ongoing improvement. It's, as we know, probably the single most important area that we've been trying to address in our schools because of the pandemic. It's raised everyone's awareness even higher than it was, thankfully, because it probably needs to be addressed and supported more than it was, and not only in Gloucester, but across the board. And so, but Amy is the right person because, first of all, her skill, her experience, her drive, but also how well she knows people in the community, in the district, in the surrounding area. And we are benefiting, our students are benefiting, our staff are benefiting in a very significant way with her leadership. So really pleased that Amy here tonight to give you an update on some of the steps that we're making and she's leading across the district.
Thank you.
I will,
More?
my job, no, that's all you got.
That's okay.
And my job
right,
is
so
to do
let
the
me-
presentation.
I just want to say, first of all, thank you for having me, but also thank you because for the last 2 years, I've listened to school committee meetings pretty regularly, and it's obvious that all of you put mental health and social emotional learning of our students as your priority. And I and everyone appreciate that. So thank you for that. And I've been muted, on these other things. So now I get to tell you all about what's the exciting things that are happening.
Sometimes Amy is watching and wants to say things.
Yeah, and I'm texting the answers to Ben and Greg and James, and they're not like telling you the answers. Right, so it's a little bit frustrating. All right, so next I want to thank Superintendent Lummis because under his direction, he saw the need not only to increase the number of support people, clinical staff in our district, but also recognize that it's not just about, you can go to the next slide. It's not just about adding people, that we need a vision, a strategy, and coordination of these people. We have amazing district staff. We have 27. We have 13 school adjustment counselors, 7 school psychologists, 3 district-wide BCBAs, which are behavior certified behavior analysts, board certified behavior analysts. And in addition to that, which you guys, you probably, I don't know if you knew how many people we have, but we also have other services. We have a school-based health center with a mental health clinician, a nurse practitioner, and a wellness coordinator, which is a great resource. We also have a student assistance program, which I started like years ago and it's still in existence, so I love that. And that is an embedded mental health clinician and it's at O'Malley. And then we have 3 graduate level interns. So we have a lot of staff, but my role has allowed us to coordinate that, provide clinical oversight, look at policies and procedures, standardization, best practices, and really, you know, I think as I saw like 70 kids a week in my previous job, because I was the only adjustment counselor for like a lot of years at Gloucester High, I always tried to change the big pieces, and I now get to do that. So that's like super exciting for me. So now we'll talk about the priorities that that I set, but I also got feedback, and I've also just gathered through the years. So there's 4 areas, and I'll go over the priorities and then the core components of each, and then kind of like an example of what we're doing in each. And they intersect. So some things hit more than one priority, obviously. So building skills, social emotional skills that prepare for life. That's a top one, and you'll hear that in the SEL curriculum K through 12. Promoting mental health and wellness through early identification and education. So that's becoming more systematic in how we identify kids early and support them before it's an acute crisis. Leveraging community partnerships. I'll talk a lot more about that, but that's really recognizing that we cannot support every kid's complex need within 4 walls of the school. We need community input and partners, and we need to do it in really creative ways, and you'll hear about that. And then using data to strengthen mental health and also to guide decisions. So the social emotional skills, when I was looking for a curriculum or a program, these are the core components that I was looking for. That it be K through 12, that the skills build on each other, that they don't get it in 3rd grade and then not until 10th, that it's reinforced, that it's repetitive exposure, and that it's developmental. And it had to have the 5 core competencies of CASEL, which is the leaders on social emotional learning. So those are self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, and relationship skills. So those are the areas, when we talk about SEL, that is what we want to develop in kids, in all our students. And then the program needed to be not just universal, so not just every kid gets it, but if kids need more, there's a tier 2, so they can get more intensive services, and a tier 3, and this program has all those. So it doesn't just teach to the general ed, to every kid in the classroom, it also has interventions that when kids need more.
So just like we do in our, you've heard us talk about a lot about this in elementary too, but it's also in middle school as well, but also in high school. Tier 1, for those who don't know, is what every child gets. It's the basic instruction every day for every child, no matter who you are, sort of thing. Tier 2 is some additional supports, and then tier 3 is often confused with special education, but it's not. Tier 3 is more specialized instruction, but that can support a student who has special education or general education. But it means because of their needs, because of where they are, in order for them to advance, they need tier 3 or specialized instruction. So that's tier 1, 2, and 3. Tier 1 being everybody, and instruction everybody gets. It's like a general curriculum, and then 1 level of intervention, and then another level. So.
Do you want to?
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Yeah, that's fine.
Sure,
It's fine with me, it's
Of
fine with
course,
me.
absolutely.
Go ahead.
How does, and I'm sure you're probably gonna hit on this in the next couple of slides. How does this get rolled out? Does this get rolled out at the elementary school level first and then?
So we are going to be hitting on that, but it is a phased implementation and we are piloting it.
I
So,
just wanted to sound smart for me.
no, you sounded very smart. And okay, so I'm going to, so I selected Trails as a pilot. It is based in cognitive behavioral therapy and mindfulness. And I've gotten really good positive feedback. It's really skills that we all need. stopping negative thoughts, challenging your thoughts, looking at the interconnectedness between thoughts, behaviors, and feelings. So and you'll see it's aligned in a lot of the other things that we're doing. So, and then tier 2 is for groups. So when I said that, so if you're doing a classroom presentation and you recognize that someone might need a little more on anxiety support, there's a 8-session group for anxiety. There's also one for depression, there's one for mixed, there's one for COVID. So it has a tier 2 intervention around cognitive coping, thinking, traps, behavioral activation, exposure. Those are just some of the core concepts. And then tier 3 is, they have like a suicide intervention, and we're working district-wide on implementing that anyway. That's not how I or the superintendent really see tier 3. It's really more intensive services, usually individually, individual modality, and it might be more frequent. So we're looking at that. The tier 3 isn't as great as tier 1 and 2. So this is just an example of the modules. So there are 20 classroom presentations throughout the years, like each year. And each module hits on the Cassell's 5 competencies. All those skills I said, social awareness, self-awareness, self-management, relationship skills, and decision-making skills. And it's obviously doesn't start with challenging your negative thought process in kindergarten. It's developmentally appropriate. All right, next.
But just I'll say on this is that this is something that Amy's done a nice job of impressing upon me, but what's powerful for me is, these are areas that all of us, can benefit from and do benefit. And many of us have just picked up some of them along the way because we're older, but the ability to help our students with, very specifically develop these skills is one of the pieces that really sets them up for success in life and to be contributing community members. So really powerful to see this in a very concrete way. I think very helpful for both our staff to define them, but then also the resources to help teach them.
So then getting back to Bill Melvin's question, this is how we're rolling it out. We had about over 40 staff trained, and we're piloting it at Plum Cove, Veterans, O'Malley, and Gloucester High School. And hopefully we'll get back lots of feedback on what they think about it, and hope to begin full implementation in 23-24. So we'll expand the pilot next year, continue to assess, and see how it goes. Go ahead.
I have a question, I just don't know if it's.
No, it's fine.
Coming to me.
It might come, it might not.
Define piloting. So how does this work in the school? Are you having a special class for this? Is it going to be taught by a math teacher 1 week?
So
how is this implemented as far as into the classroom through the pilot program?
So I forgot, so I left out that one sentence. So the adjustment counselors are really taking charge. I think we were all cognizant that our teachers are tapped, and to ask them to do one more thing just wasn't gonna be helpful this year. So they're taking the charge, and we're really looking at readiness. Who's ready, who wants to do this, and going that way. So it looks different in every school.
Is it a group?
So it's like 2 classes might be doing it in one school.
Okay.
So it's like grades usually.
Okay.
Yeah,
Piloting the tier 1 component.
yeah, that's a tier, no, and the tier 2.
And the tier 2?
Yeah,
But you do it as a class, or do you? do
Yeah, it's
break
as a
down groups?
class.
As a class.
As a class.
Okay.
the tier 1 is as a class. The tier 2 groups, I'm gonna talk more about that,
Okay.
but I got a grant and we're gonna use that, the tier 2 model as an intervention in that.
So at this point, the adjustment counselors, I think I did this right, are going into, say, an elementary class or middle school class and teaching those modules you just saw to the students. The teachers are observing or are there often, learn it, and they can give feedback, that sort of thing, become a little more familiar with it. So that's one thing we've got to figure out as we go forward is who will take primary responsibility for teaching. And it probably will be, ultimately, it'll probably be a combination of could be anyway, the classroom teacher, the homeroom teacher, that sort of thing, maybe through some advisory lessons as well here at the high school, but that's what we're working through as we gain familiarity with it.
Can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
Thanks. And just correct me if I'm wrong. adjustment counselors are already doing some skill building in classrooms at the elementary school level. Is that right? So this isn't sort of like a new idea that adjustment counselors would go in and do some teaching.
Right, so you're absolutely right. That's what a lot of them are doing. I think when I did an SEL needs assessment and I did meet with everyone, every principal, every adjustment counselor, every psychologist alone. Everyone's doing something kind of different. So we're trying to make it so that there's every kid's getting what we think are the skills in a really comprehensive way. But you're right.
No, so I was trying to respond to sort of Melissa that like the idea
Oh, yeah.
of the adjustment counselors coming in to sort of teach some social emotional skills is something that's happening already, but absolutely having something that's consistent is really important.
Yeah. So they are comfortable with that and they want to help the teachers because sometimes, so I think that's a great point.
I was just trying to figure out if this was a class or not, because the
Yeah.
topic seems so important, so I'm like, is there a time set aside for the day if this is gonna be the focus of the
Yeah.
curriculum?
And
In
yes,
high school, would it be a block? In elementary school, it would just be part of their day, but that's what I was trying to figure out.
And that's what we'll figure out.
Yeah, as you go.
Yeah. One more thing that I just quickly is, as you know, I report to,
Sorry.
we're going to the different schools. Katie, Greg, Bach, myself, we're going to different schools to get input on the plan for ongoing improvement. Across the elementary schools, probably of only one or two things that were consistent across the elementary school in terms of needs was NSEL curriculum. That's consistent, coherent, and they're doing it together. What part of it was moving on from second step, which the finance committee heard about, but just a real understanding that their skill development, basic skill development for all students really needs to happen. So this is very timely in terms of what's raising that need and us in the process of checking this out.
Laura has a question.
So when this is coming up, just say,
No.
please wait. So just thinking about pulling kids into a tier 2 thing, I'm just wondering about stigma, and how, sort of, I'm sure you're all working on that, but I'm just thinking at any point when the child comes out of. And the second thing, again, you may hit this, but one of the things that I'm a parent of elementary school kids, and one of the sort of social emotional things that really struck me is the growth mindset. That as a really powerful tool. So for the kids who are already sort of coming up with those things, will you be integrating what they've already, sort of the messages they're already getting with these new themes?
So in terms of the identification of kids and offering them additional supports, that is nothing that would be mandated. So that would be a discussion with the guardian, the parent, and the student, and to see if it's a time limit, it's 8 weeks, if they wanted that intervention. I think what we're seeing at the school level is, and I can't sit in another meeting talking about the broken mental health system, there's no services. So we are having to provide much more. And so I think, but I think if someone felt like that was not going to be helpful or stigmatizing, then they wouldn't participate. It's totally optional. Unlike the tier 1, which is where everyone gets it.
It's very similar to like reading intervention, math intervention. You're identifying groups of students that need more based on data, based on teacher concerns. And then you're building things in for short periods of time to see if you're effective. It's that social emotional piece that also goes along with that MTSS and multi-tiered systems of support that we're trying to build.
So, and I want to respond to your other piece, which is the growth mindset. So when I went to every school has huge pockets of amazing things happening. I mean, no one's doing it everywhere, but so I think we look at those pieces and we keep some of those pieces. Like even the second step, to be honest, it's very good at pre-K. This isn't. So maybe we keep that. So I think that's where we're looking at taking, what we need and what our students need and adjusting. Okay, so so I get so excited about every slide. I think this is the next part that I'm really excited about. Okay, so this is promoting mental health and wellness through early identification and education. So how we're doing this, the core components of this would be really looking at the support and clinical deepening the work around using evidence-based practices and more of a shared language. We also are doing more early identification using universal screening tools to ensure equitable access to necessary services. So that's a lot of words, but basically it's like creating systemic ways to identify kids and support them better, and not just supporting the kid that is crying the loudest. We need to support those kids that are struggling in silence. So we're doing that. And increase awareness of both mental health and wellness to decrease stigma and promote help-seeking behaviors. So next slide, because I'm going to go over everything about that. So this is how we are developing clinical staff. So this is one of the most exciting parts. In the past, we met very infrequently, maybe once a month, maybe not once a month. Now the principals, the leadership has been completely supportive of having us have a weekly time every week. All the district clinical staff meet. And we meet, we do clinical consults, we have trainings, this week I have 504 training, next week I have QPR, question, persuade, refer. The week after that, I have psychopharmacology. So there's topics, we do get trainings in, we share high-risk cases. So if there's a family in Betts and O'Malley and the high school, we talk about and share information so that we can support families better. What else do we do?
Those are big things, by the way.
Those are all big things.
Really, really big.
They're big, and you know what, and I come from the mental health world. In a school, you don't have time to reflect on your work. It has been really changing. How we support kids has been just so improved by this time. And then I also started a North Shore school-based mental health collaborative, because again, I think we can learn from neighboring districts. And so I invite all my friends in the neighborhood. Greg is like, oh my God. But anyway, so that has been great. And then Lynn Lyons, as you've heard, has been really changed how it's shifted how we have supported kids struggling with anxiety. So I'm going to go through that in the next slide, unless you wanted to ask me anything about that.
Can I say one
Okay, go
thing?
ahead. Yeah,
Sam, go ahead.
Thanks. I more just sort of want to make a comment because I just want to thank you for recognizing the need for clinical supervision and consultation, right? Because as a social worker, when I think about my work, supervision has historically been probably the most important thing that I could have received from my colleagues, both individual and group supervision. I don't think I could have survived the work that I do currently now in private practice. I pay for my own supervision. It is so incredibly important.
Mhm.
And it's something that I've recognized as a need for school-based mental health counselors.
Mhm.
They don't receive supervision
Mhm.
and historically. And so I just want to pinpoint that as just so incredibly important for just the rest of the committee, because without that, it is so hard to reflect on your work and to bounce ideas off of each other and to just receive support for the really, really tough work that these clinicians are doing. It's so incredibly important. So thank you for recognizing that need.
Thank you.
I have a question, and it could be to both of you, actually. A few years ago, before COVID, there was a group that met, I think it was once a month. It included a representative from the district attorney's office, the police department, and CCL.
Yep, we still meet.
So you do. So is this, are you at those meetings to get that information from CCI to bring back to your colleagues?
Yes.
And have those important discussions?
Yes.
Okay, good to hear. I was worried that it got lost.
No, we still are involved.
Thank you.
And then, like Sam said, I also meet with people individually in groups of teams. So they're getting a lot more support, clinical support. So Lynn Lyons, so if Ben's best decision was hiring me, mine was hiring her. She has, not your best. So Lynn Lyons has really shifted how we do work. So she has, been a great consultant to us. We meet with her once a month. She has, emphasized the need to develop skills for students, not try to eliminate or accommodate to anxiety, which makes anxiety stronger. And there's just a lot of ways to do that. She uses a lot of narrative, like externalizing worry, focusing on the process, not the content. So if you focus on, so I'll give you an example. So I had a psychiatrist call me, Amy, this kid has PTSD, the English class is too loud, she needs a separate space. And this is right when we started working with her. So I'm walking to James Cook's office thinking I'm gonna find her a separate space. By the time I got there, I'm like, no. Lynn Lyons would not want me to find a separate space. She would want us, what skill does this student need to develop the ability to tolerate distress? And then maybe also what skills does that teacher need to make it more of a trauma-informed classroom? And I'm gonna tell you, that takes a lot more time than finding a separate space, but it's so important. So there's many scenarios of what she's helped with, but basically, we're not looking to eliminate distress or create certainty in people's lives, because that doesn't exist in the world. We need people to change their relationship with anxiety, tolerate distress, and learn ways to cope with it. So it's been great. All right. So next slide. So this kind of goes under social emotional learning, but kind of not. So this has mental health literacy. This is teaching kids the language of mental health. Not just mental pathology, but really wellness too, which you'll see in another slide. But basically, this is very aligned with the mental health ambassadors. I'm actually trying to get them to be the voice around this, to go to O'Malley, teach kids about destigmatizing mental health, how to promote mental wellness, and know how to get help. The biggest thing is we want kids to get help before it reaches a crisis. So.
And you've met, obviously, mental health masters who lead in Green Bay Ed.
Very good. So that's the activating the youth voice. I didn't change it. I changed it on mine. So this is a theme really throughout everything, is really empowering kids. And this has been one of my favorite parts, is just developing these kids' voice and skills in doing this work. Okay, so I think the next. So this is leveraging community partners. So it's recognizing that I said before, we are the school we cannot possibly support every kid's complex needs. We need the community. We need to get more connected. Well, I'm connected, but not everyone is, but they need to be more connected. We need to think outside the box in creating wraparound supports for our kids. So you're gonna hear about that in our partnerships. Next. So I developed RAISE last year, re-engaging all youth to school. It was out of the need to create an off-site program for kids who couldn't come to the high school for whatever reason because of COVID. And it was online, they would do work online at Unity, and they could also access their mental health, psychoeducational groups, food, housing services, they have a lot of services. So, but I noticed that we needed an on-site tutor. We needed someone that could help kids more academically there. So the $20,000 grant was received, and we hired a student success coach. And the program started today. It can serve up to 15 people. We're really excited about that. So that's that. And that's just another way to, support kids. So this is super exciting. This I call screening for well-being. It's actually what I think we need to be doing district-wide, but I'm piloting it this year. It's universal screening. So we should be doing universal screening, period. But it's a big endeavor. So I got $100,000 from DOE a couple weeks ago to pilot it. Yeah, so you guys are gonna approve that soon? And,
I have her at every meeting.
all right.
Much more fun than I am. Sorry, Danny.
So we're gonna be doing, the 10th and 11th grade are gonna get an anxiety scale called the GAD. It's 7 items. And again, I wanna try to phrase it like screening for well-being, like we're not just screening for pathology. But I just think we need a systematic way to get kids to get to know what kids are struggling. So we already do a depression scale in the SOS signs of suicide in the health class. That's a evidence-based program. We've also done a couple wellness checks at the high school and then responded to those needs. But the most exciting part of it though about this, okay, so we got the grant, yay, we're gonna pilot the universal screen. Now, what do we do with the kids that are elevated, that need support? So we're gonna pay JRI money to run the Trails 8-week CBT groups around anxiety for kids who want it. And I also wrote in, because our EL students are struggling, but they might not endorse an anxiety scale. So we are partnering with Project Adventure, and I have a bilingual adventure-based counselor who's gonna work with those kids. So that's out of this grant. So that's so exciting. All right.
When they come to Gloucester High School.
They're gonna come to Gloucester High School, they're gonna bring them to the ropes courses in Beverly. There's money for transportation. We also, in this grant, have money to get a bilingual case manager. So it's a lot of work, but it ends June 30th. So we gotta we're
How
starting,
much this coming June 30th? 23, 22?
yeah. We're good. We have a whole timeline and it'll be good. So I'll let you know how that pilot goes.
Can
And
I,
then data collection analysis, this is my least favorite, oh, Sam,
Go ahead, Sam.
sorry, I
no,
was in
that's
third person. This is really hard and frustrating for me to be waving up here, so I apologize. Can you just break down a little bit more what universal screening looks like? Are we only screening for anxiety? Are we screening for depression? Are we screening for trauma? What does that look like? Or what does it look like for, like, what do you imagine it being sort of long-term?
what do I imagine it being long-term?
Yeah, like what's your
Okay, so-
ideal?
So I'm looking at a lot of different things, but this year we're just doing the craft. I didn't mention this, but we're doing the craft, which we do usually for 1 grade. We're gonna do it for 2, and that's the substance use screening. And then as I've always wanted to do, in addition to that, an anxiety scale, because I think kids are self-medicating, and that is a nice way to have an education, you know, if they have a substance abuse problem, they may, you know, so we're gonna do this craft and the GAD, which is anxiety. We decided not to do the depression yet. We do it in 9th grade. And we wanted to try the anxiety because we wanted to make sure we had the capacity to respond. And anxiety has been the most prevalent since the COVID, so we thought that would be the kind of symptom to target. In the future, I would love input. There's also like these, I'm forgetting the name, but there's these ones that little kids can do on iPads about wellness checks. K-3, there's a great model. I forget what it's called, something up. Mind Up, or anyway. So yeah, it's up in the air as to where we're going with this, because I think I need a lot more input.
Thank you.
And you've mentioned this already, Amy, one of the crucial challenges here is to do screenings and then not have in place how you respond is just, it's very problematic. You know, so wanting to screen everybody, but no, at this point we don't have the capacity. So this is why the JRI Project Adventure component is really important, at least on the short term. But then that's what something that Amy is obviously very concerned, aware of, is how we build so we can respond once we do screen.
Amy, can you give us a sense of what the wait lists are like in town for mental health services?
I was told a year. I don't even refer, I refer to my friends and beg them. So I don't go to the agencies anymore, but they're astronomical.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, oh, JRI though has been great. I mean, they're gonna be doing this, and I also have Unity doing a drop-in one day a week as well with kids, so at the high school, so that's good. So the screening for well-being and then data is, I won't go through too much, but basically resource mapping, needs assessments, and using behavioral data and program evaluation to help guide decisions. Right now, you can go to the next one, we're done it. I think where I get a little bit frustrated is like, we keep hearing all kids are struggling, more kids are struggling, they're struggling, and it's all very anecdotal and qualitative. We've been through a hard time. I think a lot of people are struggling. So I did work with SSRE with the help of the Gloucester Health Department, and SSREs who we've done historically for the YRBS. They're amazing.
Can you show what YRBS is?
Oh, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And they're just amazing people. And they created a dashboard, a behavioral health dashboard that will track non-identifying information throughout the district on different incidences, homelessness, 51As, anytime there's an educational disruption due to mental health reason, screenings, that kind of thing.
What's a 51A?
A suspected child abuse or neglect.
I mean, to that point, would you be able to provide or like this SSRE sounds like a great organization, but would you be able to provide us a snapshot of what some of their evaluation or some of their research, or can we
Yes.
find that? Is it readily available?
So you mean the YRBS?
Survey.
I can get you that.
Yeah, survey's done, was it every 2 years?
Done every 2 years. It's gonna be hopefully done this year. We're still trying to get a vendor because they're not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
But I also can have the superintendent share with you the dashboard. It's almost done.
Okay.
If you want to-
Yeah, because I totally agree with you. I mean, everyone saw the kid, children nowadays, there's a lot more stress, a lot more anxiety. Is there data, is there reports like that, or are there organizations that can show that type of data? I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, the YRBS would show you that.
Yeah.
And the really important piece on that is move past anecdotal to understanding what's really happening and then being able to act on it. Because it's really hard to act when it's anecdotal, or there's this pervasive sense of kids are struggling. It's hard to act on that.
Right.
So some of the data, report data gathering that Amy wants to do and putting in place will, really help us sort of prioritize, act, understand, really size what's going on in what areas. So.
And then last, so April 6th, the mental health ambassadors have begged me to get him. It's Kevin Hines. He survived the jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, and his is a message of hope and of that there is help, and to get help, you don't have to go to those extremes. And he's a evidence-based, they say he's the only evidence-based suicide prevention speaker. So I'm hoping, well, I'm going to have him two times in the DHS, and then either at the school, maybe City Hall, I'm not sure. We'll see. So we'll have another event at night.
Go ahead, Mark.
Will you let us help promote that? Because we really need a community-wide promotion of that, and I'd love to have the school committee help you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll get few folks activated, we'll get PTOs activated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this
gonna be streamed?
So the last one we had, who was that speaker that came to talk about anxiety? There wasn't enough room for all the parents. So I mean, as you're saying, promote it. I'm thinking, yeah, you're gonna promote it, but you're gonna need a bigger room.
Well, I would imagine it'll be on Zoom.
So streaming it is a question that I asked before, but I think the woman that was here before was paid and they wouldn't allow it to be streamed.
That's very common.
But I was hoping, I was following what he said. That would be huge.
Yeah.
If not, you might need to do more than one session
Yeah.
from the last reaction from the community.
You might want to be compensated, you have somebody paying to have, present in front of a certain number of people. Then you add streaming, That'll be another negotiation.
I don't know how this relates, but there were those GEF sponsored social emotional, roundtables
Last
for
year, yeah.
parents. Last year, I think it
Yeah,
was,
let's
right?
go there.
That we were able to put on, I mean, I know this is the beginning, but like that we're able to be on Zoom and there were different times, and I think that's a very useful model for the parents.
This is in conjunction with the Boston Health Department, right?
Yes,
And-
yes.
Yeah, so, but I think, streaming would be great, would be ideal. But we're looking, because everything people raise could be, a challenge or an issue or something to solve.
Will the two assemblies that, great.
Yes.
Go ahead, Melissa.
First a comment, I think, when you mentioned the mental health ambassadors, kids helping kids is huge. I have a 13-year-old granddaughter, and there's one thing I've learned, if a 56-year-old person tells her something, it's not happening. But if a 15 or 18-year-old tells her something, she's all ears. So
Right.
I think that is an excellent way to get messaging out, and for kids to be able to relate to another student or kid about some issues that they likely have experienced
Yeah.
themselves. So I think that's huge. When you were talking about the whole social emotional, this is becoming a new norm. There are some parents in the community, I can say this because I've had recent discussions, who think that schools should provide the reading, the writing, and the arithmetic, and all these other expenses that are impacting the budget is a concern to them, and that should be on the parents' responsibility. But I love how you started this conversation saying this committee as a whole puts that first, so it is becoming a norm, which is great progress in a
Yes.
couple of years. But my, no, go ahead,
Well, I mean, what we know more and more is that if kids aren't ready to learn, they're not gonna learn. So that's, toothaches or eyesight or anxiety or, anyway, so, learning isn't available to them if they are stressed out, anxious, or and don't have the skills as I think Amy's examples earlier to, to manage themselves within the classroom, So I, the responsibility of schools has grown over the years, no doubt about that, right? But also our understanding of how kids learn best has grown exponentially. I think this is a piece of that. So, it's a legitimate question, but I think we have really clear answers that kids, all kids, who struggle, it's not just struggling, right? It's helping kids get ready to learn opens up learning for them.
in my position where I work, I see the ugliness, and then I read reports, and then I'm like, how does that kid go to school the next day? So it's completely understandable in my work. So my question, what I was trying to get at after I gave those comments was, so we had, the anxiety is huge at most grade levels. But how are we gonna determine what is COVID anxiety versus regular anxiety? Meaning, there's such a huge impact just COVID had on student learning with anxiety, especially if you think of first graders or kindergarten. Their first 2 years in school have been with masks and being afraid of being close to somebody, and hopefully eventually that's going to go away. But that in itself is going to create anxiety for that particular group that doesn't know, without the anxiety of, am I too close to you? Don't breathe on me. Is your mask up right? All those issues that they're experiencing. So how is these programs going to identify or assist anxiety that is brought on by what's going on now versus everyday unfortunate issues that create anxiety? So I really think
So
that's a
I guess,
question you
well,
can
I guess,
answer.
I think my reaction, I don't know if it's an answer, but is that we're never clear on what is the root cause. And I think what we're learning with the consultation is that the content and the reason why doesn't really matter.
Okay.
It's more, everyone's gonna have distress in their life. And I just don't like to keep pathologizing it, like even clinical anxiety, is it really that? It doesn't have to be that. It could just be distress or worry, and then helping kids manage that, right? So I think we're gonna have a lot of impact fallout, emotional, we have already, right? Due to the pandemic, but I don't think it's ever gonna become clear what is what, like what to differentiate.
And it doesn't matter because.
I don't think
you're
so.
treating this,
We're-
they're not, okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Because we're creating, right,
Skill.
skill building and the process, not the content.
Yeah, I think something as simple as somebody has a grandparent that's not well, right? I mean, that's gotta be weighing on some,
Absolutely.
young
Right.
kids running.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Laura.
I feel that too.
Let Sam go first. This is her.
Go ahead, Sam.
Go, no, you do that.
Right, no worries. Amy, I'm just curious, what do you think our role is as a district in supporting family systems? And I say that because in sort of thinking about what Melissa just said, you know, I think more the impact on kids in relation to COVID is, in my opinion, more in relation to family stress, right?
Mhm.
Like family stress has increased, you know, tenfold over the last 2 years. Parental stress has increased tenfold over the last 2 years. And generally parents are not okay. Parents
Mhm.
are really struggling. So I'm curious, what do you think our role is, you know, with wait lists being as long as they are, first probably in home family therapy or family therapy in general, how can we support families?
I think our role is growing and I think we are trying to support them in every way. I mean, I know just from doing supervision, our engaging parents, meeting with parents, going to home visits, I mean, we're doing it constantly. And I talked, with Greg, I'm working on the attendance. Family engagement is a huge piece. And just not just family engagement at the crisis level, not just at the, oh my God, they haven't come for 2 weeks. No, it should start like kindergarten. And proactive relationship building, not, so I think that's what I believe the role is forming those really strong partnerships with parents early on.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. Kathy and Greg and I were just talking about this today, right? Like for 2 years, families have sort of had to sort of be at a distance to our school buildings, right? Like we haven't been able to go in as much and participate. And so I think we have some building to do again on inviting families in and getting some FaceTime, meaningful FaceTime with parents and guardians.
No, I wholeheartedly agree.
Okay, Laura.
So firstly, I just wanted to say, like, I've watched your work, from here. And it's so huge and so important what you're building here. So just like a really heartfelt thank you. And also, the point you made and the superintendent made about like, these are skills we all need. And we're in this really rapidly changing society, right? And kids, I see it, kids are on screens and everything has changed in a decade or 2 decades. And with that comes mental health issues or changes. I don't want to pathologize it either. So I think the focus on how do we build relationships? How do we learn to turn away negative thoughts? I just think that's just tools for life for every student and every adult. And I think, spreading the message that way may help because there's no one who cannot benefit from what you're talking about. And so I just want to thank you for the way in which you're approaching it and for all you're doing.
Adult education class.
Okay.
Well, that'll be the next
We could
thing.
use a little bit of pass and clap. And,
Bill, you have a question?
A statement and a question, just to echo what everyone else said, I really appreciate what you're doing, Amy, and I wrote down a bunch of things, but one of the things that I think is for me is the most important thing is and you said it, the capacity to respond. Kids open up this Pandora's box of, we can sit around and hypothesize about anxiety all day long, but all of a sudden you got a 5th grader who's in a tight spot, a really tight spot, because we've opened the box of, let's talk about anxiety. And that can be I think it can be a dangerous and slippery slope if the services that kids need aren't in place. And it's only going to take, a couple of bad examples of what we should have had some sort of safety net. We should have had something for that kid. And So to me, that's the real important takeaway. The other important takeaway that Laura just mentioned is relationships. At the end of the day, it's all about building relationships, whether it's with a teacher that you feel comfortable with, or a counselor, or through the ambassador program, maybe it's another student, and to really kind of hone in on that. Like most 60-year-old people, I come from the school, well, just pull yourself up by the bootstrap, you'll be fine, don't worry, get through it, grind it out. And the world is definitely different than that. Sometimes I get a little bit concerned that we're creating something that we have to be careful about, but I'm totally on board with what you do. And I don't think I could support it anymore, or be any more impressed with the work that you do.
Thank you.
That's me pontificating.
Any more questions? Thank you. for all
Thank
you're
you.
doing, And thank you for being here with us. That's good, and I think it'll be worthwhile to actually maybe have the school committee promote just this particular piece of our meeting tonight on Facebook, because I do know, parents are busy, they don't necessarily look at our agendas unless somebody's talking about it. I just think there may be a lot of parents that might want to know the framework with which we are approaching this going forward.
That's great.
Meeting, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next-
Thank you.
I will say the next part of it is also quite interesting too.
Are you gonna be as entertaining and
Is it-
No, we're not as entertaining.
Am I
No,
saying?
no, I can't.
Am I leaving?
You are welcome to leave. You have to go do other things.
Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. Good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello folks, so we're gonna give you an update on a few things. Like I often do want to just highlight again and thank Amy Camp for her leadership in her presentation tonight and just helping the committee and the community really get a handle on the great work that our clinical staff, our guidance counselor, adjustment counselors, school psychologists are doing together to really improve our support and service of our students. Very powerful stuff. I'm going to pull up a presentation. Before let me just pull that up quickly. So I haven't shared this with you yet because there's just some things are happening pretty quickly and putting some things in place which we're going to share and update you about tonight. So a couple things. So again, just as we always say, our primary objective this year is safely educating all our students in our schools every day to maximize learning, address our students' full needs, and support community and family needs. A couple things. First of all, just to begin, I had the distinct pleasure and privilege of being at East Gloucester School yesterday during their professional learning communities. Professional learning communities are groups of teachers meeting together on topics of their interest. It helps them learn more about their work to learn from each other and develop their practice. And just had a great time listening to the professional learning communities at East Gloucester and sharing so far what they've been working on over the first half of the year. They have some of them, they're curriculum based, many of them. One group has been working on the ELA pilot. One for Wit and Wisdom and one for CKLA. They both reported out. Another group reported on the work they're doing with geodes, which is science, I believe. Another one reported out on work around doing some health work with fifth graders. And one more, was working on supporting EL learners in using visuals and translations to help with word problems. Some pretty meaty topics. Folks learned a lot, but what I appreciated a few things so much about learning from them was how purposeful they were in their learning, how they were talking about and very honestly open and sharing what they were learning. And then also how they talked about how they're going to take what they've been learning and apply it to their classrooms, that sort of thing. One teacher was, this is Emily Carney, was just tremendous in sharing how she's doing the Wit and Wisdom pilot, how the beginning was a bit overwhelming, like new things often are, but and she wasn't too sure about it. But now she's grown more comfortable with support from her colleagues who she was working with, and also Melissa Francis, literacy coach, has just really, come to see just some real advantages and some real work. Folks are working on, moving on from different things like reading streets. But I appreciate that honesty, that real work together to get better. As you've heard me say again and again, that's really needs to be our mantra. How do we work together to get better every day? And then the best part of that meeting was just hearing the laughter. The group together, enjoying themselves, enjoying each other, laughing about things they were doing in their groups, laughing together. And one thing they learned was that fifth graders need to do more teeth brushing. That's one of the health things they learned, but that's probably not too much of a surprise for parents. But it was great to be among professionals, digging in together and learning about their craft and then sharing it. So, get a COVID update tonight. Some good news. This is our wastewater. I don't show this too often because, as you can see, for most of the year, it's not really news. But as December went into January, or actually went November and December, the wastewater went up significantly, as everyone saw. But then good news really shifted on the results from January 7th. That's this first decline here. This height was December 31st. The next week later was January 7th, and the 14th and the 21st. So you can see we're experiencing in the community decreasing number of cases, and that's mirroring what we're seeing in the wastewater. As I said to our staff a week or so ago, I gave what is now Greg Bach's most favorite line in a superintendent update was "Good news from Gloucester's fecal matter." He keeps on wanting me to use it again and again, so I just use it again. So there you go. So our numbers in terms of active cases have gone down in terms of the currently active case in Jalisco, 73 to 109. Still had a significant uptick in cases over the last 2 weeks, but as you can see, pretty much all schools have declined. I think O'Malley is the only one that's up a little bit, but some really significant declines, say Plum Cove, at the preschool for its size, at West Parish, at Veterans. So, good, again, that is mirroring or sort of following the wastewater results. So that's good news. There you can see our cases have gone, up and down in the beginning of the year, and then up, and now with a dip this last week. We, by all accounts, assume that will continue, but of course all evidence is pointing that it will continue to decline. There isn't, so that's what we expect. The vaccination percentage, and that's the first time we're reporting the elementary schools. So you can see across all of our elementary schools, we're just about at 50%. Obviously, preschool, most kids are not eligible at the preschool to get vaccinated. That's why that's so low. But when Nurse Leader Jeff Marco pulled this tonight, or this morning rather, he and I are both surprised that by and large, the elementary schools are at 50% or so, which is a good, I think, a good, good beginning, good start. As you can see, O'Malley continues to go. You see the last 2 weeks ago, the numbers. So all of those have increased. O'Malley and GHS, and then GHS has also increased as well. And looks like the 11th grade is catching up with the 12th grades. That's also a good sign. But those continue to go up slowly, bit by bit. Have had a little more rapid increase over the last few weeks or month or so. Another piece is to follow from last time. This is a student attendance data from last time, or week 2 weeks ago, for the first week or so of school. What you'll see here is that no schools at this point were above 90% attendance. None of them were. Okay. At this point, for these 3 days, and really pretty much the whole time. This is the last week, and you'll see that 5 of the 7 schools are above 90%. Okay, so a big improvement. The scale is a little bit different on the 2 slides, but I just want to show you that 5 of the 7 schools. We only have the preschool, which is up and down significantly. This was a day they didn't have school. That's why they have 0 attendance, so it goes below the chart. But they have, they're smaller, so they fluctuate a little more significantly. The high school was up a little bit last week, down, and now trending back up again. But that's just between last week and 2 weeks ago and this week. That is essentially we're getting back to normal attendance for this year. As I mentioned last time, we were moving definitely normal attendance for staff at the elementary schools, and also O'Malley at that point, and then I'm showing you O'Malley and GHS right now, because those are the only ones that we had any significant concern about. On top, in the yellow, is O'Malley's absences, and for that sort of first week or so, back from break, and now in the yellow down below, you see the more recent ones. So lower early this week, they'll uptick in the last couple of days, and then down lower again. The white band here is the teacher absences. I didn't show you that last time, but you can see the teacher absences are a part of the total absences in yellow. The same thing with GHS on the top. These were really a very difficult week or so for GHS. You can see that the numbers have come down significantly, and then also, except for the last couple of days, up again. Again, this time of year, this isn't out of the norm for this time of year, but what you do see as well is, part of those are absences are teachers, not all of them typically. So one thing that also does affect, that isn't reflected here, are professional development. So folks will often be out with professional development that maybe we're leading and we're doing, but they may be out of the classroom for that day. But I didn't include those in here, but that does sometimes impact the staffing of the school from time to time. So the next piece tonight is just some progress or next steps where we're going to start making, and I'm going to present to you tonight about sort of our next steps of living with COVID. A second here. Second here. I think it's just going terribly wrong. All right, not sure what's going on here. Just lost the presentation.
Can you send that to us so that we have it? Because I don't think we got it.
No, you didn't, because it was being worked on this afternoon.
Okay.
I'll send it to you
Yeah,
afterwards.
that's fine.
So, just in terms of, we're now approaching 2 years of COVID. March 20th will be a day I may never forget. And we've been dealing with the turmoil and the disruption, the safety protocols, and sadly the loss of too many families. Families of too many families have suffered loss here in Gloucester, in Massachusetts, but also across the world, the globe. Through all of that, one thing has been constant, and that's that we adjust and we just keep on adjusting. And as we learn more about the virus and the science behind it, we've had to adjust every step of the way. We've been adjusting as we develop new safety protocols. We let go of earlier ones. I think every day I think I'm not washing my groceries anymore, because that was trying. We adjusted remote learning. We adjusted again to returning in school, of course. We've adjusted as new tools to combat the virus have been developed. So vaccinations, now more and more different types of tests, and now also pills and a variety of methods. We've adjusted distances. We've adjusted time and time again. We've entered new phases of the pandemic with more information, new tools, revised protocols about what it takes to keep our students and our families and our staff safe. And so tonight we're beginning to enter another new phase, I believe. One that I think is going to continue us on our path towards greater normalcy in our schools, maybe in our lives. And that means more about living with COVID among us instead of COVID telling us how to live. Tonight Samantha mentioned that we need to do more building with families. Families haven't been able to sort of spend too much time in our schools, experiencing that community, seeing the success of their children and really experiencing the joy of being in school. And tonight we're talk about making testing much more widely available to our staff and our family and our students. And part of that, it will help us keep moving towards that time where things are at least how we remember them in some ways and better in other ways. So we're going to talk about making testing widely available. We're also going to talk about letting go some of the current work that we've been doing as well in current practices. So let me jump in and show to you what we're talking about and just get into some details here. We've got Kylie Davis here on the line, and also Nurse Leader Jeff Parko. They're the ones who are really helping lead this effort. Particularly Kylie will take a very significant role in that. So they will help me along as we go. We just get the sharing going here. Please. Second. Okay, so our next step in learning to live with COVID here in our schools is about, so I mentioned change has been constant, all these different things we've been going through, continue to move forward. And what we're trying to do here is, moving from COVID is our life to living with COVID. And what that means, we continue to move toward no longer curtailing opportunities and activities, being able to identify any positive cases as early as possible. We need to always pay close attention to symptoms of illness, and that's COVID or otherwise. Going forward, what we certainly have learned is if a child is sick for any reason, the best way to keep our schools healthy is for that child to stay home until they're better. And we'll always have to pay attention to that. We want to continue moving towards returning our focus to learning and support and moving our schools forward. We want to continue to move toward less energy, time, and attention on dealing with and reacting COVID. And that includes allowing our nurses to support the range of student health needs, but not being overwhelmed by COVID, which is something that really has happened over the past couple of years. So there are some things that won't change. One of the most important things that vaccinations will remain our highest priority. This is the single most important weapon against COVID, and the more people in our community and our schools who are vaccinated, the safer our families, our schools, and our communities are. So we're going to continue to urge students and families to get vaccinated. Of course, all our staff are. We'll continue to let families and staff know about vaccination clinics and booster clinics. We'll do that on a regular basis as we have been. We'll probably ramp that up some. Another thing that won't change is masks remain a statewide requirement for all students and staff in public schools. I support this. This committee voted very clearly to support masks in the fall, or in the end of the summer. But I do want to be clear and remind folks that this is a statewide requirement. We don't have an option on this. Masks continue on buses, and we'll continue to retain this distancing as much as possible, continue to limit numbers of students at tables at lunch and space them apart. So some things that will continue on, and we see no change in those at all. What we do see, and this is significant, is that we are launching with the support of the state, at-home rapid testing program. It's not something we've ever offered before, but starting this week, families can opt in to get a free rapid test for any of their students every single week. Staff can also opt in to get a free rapid test every week. These tests are done at home, and then positives are reported through a form and reported to our nurses at our schools. As long as families report them, we'll know of any positive cases. So I'm going to go through a few of these things to help you understand them, and then happy to answer questions. With the at-home rapid testing program, we now have what I think is a very, very big deal. Every staff and every student in our schools has the ability and the option to have 2 tests per week, right? This is something that would have been, it was unheard of a year ago, even 6 months ago, I would say even a month ago, because they weren't available. But with our weekly pool testing and the at-home rapid tests, every single person who wants to can know within twice a week whether they are safe and COVID-free, and therefore won't be infecting anybody else. Okay. Plus, in addition to that, we will keep going with symptomatic testing. Any staff or students who are in the building and experience symptoms after the first period of the day can get a free rapid test at that point. We are still encouraging families that if you have symptoms, stay home. And one of the things we have had to do is, if students show up with symptoms, we send them home. Okay, and that's just that's logistical and operational, because the symptomatic testing is specifically for folks who experience and come out with symptoms, during the school day. So in terms of, I'm gonna focus on the at-home rapid testing. The process is this. So you think of a 2-week cycle here. The first Wednesday will be the opt-in deadline to start the following week. I'll go some specific timelines in a moment. So a family signs up by Wednesday, the first Wednesday, that allows them to get tests the following week. Okay, student tests on the following week, student tests are delivered. We order them every week from the state, or every 2 weeks, I should say. Student tests are delivered to our main office every other Tuesday. Those test boxes all have 2 tests in them. Those are distributed to schools on Wednesday, so the next day, with lists that we're organizing for the schools. The next day, Thursday of that week, schools distribute the tests to students in homeroom, or at GHS, it'll be in A block, because that happens every day. Then students take the test home. We'll notify families who are participating, every Thursday, when the tests are coming home, to look in the backpacks and ask their students for them, okay? And then each student gets a box with 2 tests, so they're delivered tests every 2 weeks, or distributed tests every 2 weeks. But everyone will test on a Friday. We do our pool testing, or weekly COVID testing on Mondays and Tuesdays, so we spread things out. And we could have done Thursday or Friday. What we decided is that if everyone's doing the same day, it's easy, simple, consistent every week. So we will be messaging and communicating that Friday is test day, basically. Reporting positive results. This is something we've had to work out. Have had good support from the State Department of Ed on this. If a student is positive, families complete an online form that goes automatically to the schools, and then we will have follow-up, not from our nurses, but from our staff members, on any positive students. So families will know what next steps and what their timeline is.
Ben, may I ask a clarification question?
Yes, yep.
On the previous slide, so do families have to opt in every single week that they want to do it? Or if they opt in, are they just?
Opt in once, yeah. But they can opt in at any time. And
Okay.
so that Wednesday deadline is just for the next distribution.
Okay, all right. So
Yep.
once you've opted in, you're in the
You're in,
program.
yep. Okay. And then any positive students return on the 6th day after testing. So the 6th calendar day, that would be Thursday. If you test positive on a Friday, you return on Thursday. Okay. But that'll be standardized as well. So that's what we're doing new. We're also letting go of a couple things. And because we'll have such significant amounts of testing here, and because our in-school transmission continues to be so low, we feel like we can, and the state is allowing us to, in terms of participating in the at-home testing program, we're required to let go of, and honestly, happy to let go of, the contact tracing of in-school close contacts. We also stop the test and stay, because that is testing specifically in school close contacts, right? This has a couple of advantages. It reduces the heavy burden on our nurses, our principals, our school secretaries, on all the work they've been doing on contact tracing, communicating, tracking, okay? Nurses specifically can use that to, as I said earlier, support a wide range of health needs in our schools. And of course, principals and secretaries never always have too much to do, so that'll help them as well. But ultimately, it's about continuing to move toward normal operations, which is really important in our schools. It does take some of the burden off our school and put some more responsibility at home. I think that's appropriate for families, and we're supporting them with reminders, communication, of course, the test itself. So we believe we can make this shift. Like I said, primarily schools continue to show, and that's data that's been collected on the pool testing and the test and stay throughout the state over the past 6 months. Also here, schools are not high-risk sources of COVID transmission. In terms of our students, while more students certainly are contracting COVID than before, they're not as high risk, especially if they're vaccinated. And just here, in terms of our testing and our in-school transmission, remains very low. All our pool testing across this whole year shows up to 1.1% positivity rate. So of all the tests we've given, only 1.1 of those tests have become positive. We're testing more students, so we may have a positive every week or a few every week, but because we're testing many more students each week, it's still a very low rate. And then test and stay, so those folks, I think this is actually even more important. Of all our test and stay, these are test and stay kids are ones who've been close contacts in school, right? So if you're gonna have in-school transmission, it's gonna be among this group. And that's been less than 2% across the whole year, so. That gives us confidence that, now is a good time, particularly because we're adding the option for at-home leave rapid testing. If we're just cutting that out, I think that'd be a real good question to ask. But because we're adding another layer of testing, and folks will have that option, then I think we're in good shape. Let me just give you some next steps here. So tonight and tomorrow, we'll launch the outreach for staff and for families. We'll also connect with PTOs to have them help us reach out. We'll do social media. Initial deadline for staff to sign up is next Tuesday. That's just the first round, People can continue to sign up. Staff tests will be distributed next Wednesday to school, or next Thursday to schools. That's right. No, next. November 2nd is Tuesday. No, it's Wednesday, sorry, Wednesday. And then at that same time, Wednesday the 2nd is the first deadline for students or families to sign up. So that's next Wednesday. That would allow them to have tests for the following week. First tests are distributed to staff on Thursday the 3rd. We order the student tests on that day. And February 4th, a week from this Friday, when staff do their first round of tests. And then the following week, we receive our student test on February 8th. We distribute those tests to schools on the 9th. They're given out to students on the 10th. And then Friday, February 11th is Friday retest day. Students take their first round of tests, staff takes their second round of tests. And then basically wash, rinse, and repeat from then on. So it's a testing every week, but distribution every other week. I think that's what I have in terms of an update on that. Can I answer any questions? And Kylie and Jeff are here to answer questions, so they can chime in at any moment.
Great. So first to Kylie and Jeff, thank you, like huge thank yous. For me, one of the very positive things about this is to take the burden off the nurses and Jeff and Kylie and what they've been doing. So, I think, so my understanding from my last meeting was that the percentage of Gloucester students participating in pool testing was in the 40s.
40s and 50s, yeah, all that, yeah, it ranges, it definitely ranges, yep.
So that's the students who have opted in. Some could be from the same family, some not, but that's the percentages. Is that Kylie? Did you say something? Oh,
No, I think
so
so.
so half, let's say, of our students are being tested weekly. I'm sort of curious what our expectation is. If only half of our students are testing now, why we think going home with tests is going to have more people tested, or just the same people tested more frequently?
I don't think we know, honestly. I mean, I don't know how to predict this. For some folks we've heard, and again, I don't know if this is, it's hard to know what this means, but we definitely have heard from some number of folks. I mean, we get phone calls that they don't want us testing. It may be okay for them to test it at their own home. I don't know, but I've heard that. Heard that a number of folks don't want us testing their students. Okay, they really have some real difficulty with it. So maybe that allows them to test at home.
Right.
I'm not sure, but that's one possibility. If what we haven't done, and this is because we have had some staffing and some operational problems, we have actually not pushed pool testing that much. We do COVID testing. We've been reminders, but it's not been a push.
No.
And so we can certainly a couple things. I mean, very honestly, with relieving some folks of some duties, we'll have a little more capacity to do a bigger push. And we have to. I mean, to get folks to sign up for this won't be. I mean, I really have no idea. What the sign up rate will be. And it'll probably take a number of weeks before we get more and more people to do it. So it's hard to know that. But if say we just did, and I think this is the bare minimum to expect, the same folks, the same number of folks who are doing the pool testing, that still is a tremendous advantage. I mean, I just can't overstate like the opportunity for families. to have your children, who may be living with older folks, who you can certainly get COVID from, although, before we didn't think that was much of a possibility, but it certainly is these days. It's a huge advantage. So it's going to be up to us, as I said broadly, to push. It'll take, I think it's important for parents to share that with their friends, So the more we can do to get this out there and get people comfortable with it, the better off we all are.
So just to keep with this, so it sounds like we're keeping our mitigations in place, right? And we're sort of just removing the piece that is around transmission. And like, basically, we're saying, we're gonna keep our mitigations, they've been working, great. And we're going to sort of stop the sort of consistent testing of kids to keep them in school, which has worked so far. There's just two things. I mean, I don't know how many immunosuppressed or, at-risk students and staff we have, but of course, this doesn't appear to put them at more risk, right? Because we're keeping our mitigations. I'm just sort of thinking this through.
Yeah. I think one way I look at it is that we're taking away the work that actually wasn't having much of a positive impact. If transmission in schools was higher, then it's really essential to do that. That one-to-one work, identify every single person, right? The fact of the matter is that's been a lot of work that hasn't resulted in much prevention. I think doing it helps people more comfortable. That's an important thing, especially in a pandemic, right? But I don't, from what I understand, talking to folks, both DESE's folks and what they're telling us, and also checking in with Department of Health, that sort of thing, and local health officials. That it's just that we're not raising the risk, and we're also giving people tools, as long as they use them. We need to push them and help them use them. That will do the thing we need to know, which is, if you have COVID, you gotta stay out of school. And when there's been a lot of doubt and uncertainty with folks, now they can be pretty sure about it. And the other thing I have to keep on doing is just pushing really supporting that if you have symptoms of any illness, you stay home, because that's how you keep others safe. So those two pieces, I think, really will require a lot more communication and a lot of hard work.
Melissa?
Same question, I don't know, I'm gonna address it to all three of you, maybe Jeff, Paco, Kylie, and yourself.
Sure.
So two questions. Is there any concern either by the health officials or the superintendent that parents at home will not be performing the test correctly? And if so, are you gonna do a video to put on the website to show how to do a test?
So we have videos to show.
Right now,
Okay?
it's not
None of us star on those videos, but if you want to create a new video where you star in it, we're open that, okay? But I mean, I know Jeff or Kylie, we're in the business of education, right?
Yep.
And so we really have a lot of faith that people can learn things and learn new things, right? But what the Department of Ed has given us is, video links, and our opt-in form, and also the positive case reporting form are translated in 7 different languages. They provided that with us, and we just modified it. No, Jeff or Kylie,
Yeah,
concerns about if folks aren't doing things right and that sort of thing?
don't have any huge concerns. The nurses are always available. This isn't a specific effort to relieve the burden of the nurses. It's just a lovely benefit of the adjustments to the program. So if anyone has questions, the nurses are available via email, phone. I'm happy to help. You can direct your calls towards me. The DESE has provided visual aids, videos, and other resources that are truly available, not just in our English, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, the ones that we're more familiar with, but every language that you would need. Often this isn't rolled out with every language. So I think that's a huge benefit. The tests are different than the ones that are used on site, the Abbott Binax Now, but they are equally as easy. The instructions are very easy to follow, and all resources will be available. I've used the kits. I was able to read through the directions and utilize the new kit within a minute of seeing a brand new device. So I think that is promising that all families, no matter their ability or ambition, that they will be able to successfully produce the results that are expected from the test.
Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Kylie, want to say something? I thought.
Kylie, anything to add, Kylie?
Nope, just ready.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? I was seeing Sam and I was thinking it was Kylie. Okay, so
I would like to add on to an earlier comment about I think it was a 1.9 positivity rate during our test and stay program on site. As boots on the ground, as a testing provider, I provided hundreds of these tests. And I will say that the majority of those positive results were symptomatic students that were sent to school. So that has an impact as well. And I think when we have testing availability, the tools, the resources we have now, we are not where we were last year or 6 months ago. We have the stage 4 testing for PCR whenever you need it. We now have rapid tests that will be provided to every family for each student, not just one box per family, but for each student. We also continue to do symptomatic testing for onsets while at school and providing the pool testings. I think we have a amazing box of tools that we didn't have recently. And from my experience, I have a mother-in-law that's a school nurse up in northern Vermont. They are so far behind where we are sitting, even at the beginning of this year. It's amazing to see the efforts that our state has provided for us and the amazing teamwork that all of our staff have collaborated. This hasn't been an easy road and this wasn't an easy decision, but I do truly believe that this is the best direction that we can go with currently. The nurses will not be checking out entirely with contact tracing. We live this. This is our bread and butter. If there are patterns, trends, anything concerning, we will be looking into them and we will be addressing them quickly and effectively.
Thank you. And my second question quickly is, so now you have all these parents testing at home, probably in the morning before the kids go into school or the night before. What is the expectation of the communication if that test is positive?
Yep.
Like, is everybody going to be calling the school
No,
first thing in the morning?
Well, it's actually,
Like, what is that process?
I'll hand it off to Kylie because she's created this and Kylie, go ahead.
So if your student tests positive or you're a staff member and you test positive on a Friday morning, you are instructed to contact your school because you will be absent, which you would do anyway. And then there is a online form that is in all of those languages that folks will fill out that asks very basic questions. When was the positive? Name, phone number, and then it gets rolled into a form that our contact tracer will pick up and then contact the family in a relatively close time frame to give them the information about their quarantine, their return to school. In the case where they call the school and are unable to get online, which is definitely going to happen, the school secretary is able to help them navigate through the form. It won't take more than a minute and 30 seconds to get through. And it's being created where there's a really easy website to go to. It's not a big long link. It's something you can remember. You can do it from a phone. And so it's a very quick and painless process to report it.
So all reports of positive tests have to go through online and not an ability to just call and tell someone?
We really want to push them towards the form because what happens when, we just actually discussed this today, some of our nurses, because they're diligent, caring, hardworking people, want to get the phone calls, okay? But phone calls have to be returned and missed and that sort of thing. This way, it'll be easier to record, easier to follow up on, easy to track, easy to communicate with. Phone calls will still happen, that's fine, okay? But Kylie, you didn't tell about the stickers. Tell about the stickers, please, come on.
Oh yeah, of course. If you know me, you know I love myself a good 5160 label. The boxes are all going to have labels on them that give the parents the clear instructions on what to do if your child tests positive. 1, report their absence. That's super important, not just for reporting of the COVID positive, but for the safety of the student knowing that they're not going to be in school and we shouldn't be expecting them. Number 2, report it at
this website that we have.
It
And
is
then,
testing.gloucesterschools.com.
Yep. That's gonna take them right there. And then lastly, you will be contacted shortly by our COVID tracer with steps to move forward. And Melissa, like you said, there are definitely gonna be cases that parents call, people.
We're not gonna hang up on them, I promise.
I'm just thinking of the mother that has like 3 kids in the morning, one's at O'Malley, one's at Beaman, and one's at the high school. Someone tests positive because she did the test that morning. What do I do now? Oh, wait, I gotta find my phone or computer and do an email, when you can just pick up the phone and say, my student's gonna be absent today because they tested positive this morning for COVID, and report your absence and your COVID all in one. And to say, so I'm someone that works in an office where people have to call me for online instructions. And let me tell you, I can't even imagine what that's gonna do to the secretaries as one after another calls. I mean, I'm sure eventually they'll learn it, but it's not as easy and accepted as you may think it is to expect the secretary to take on that additional instruction on top of their duties already.
Which is why exactly we want to push them towards doing reporting online.
But if they want instruction on how to do it, you said that the school secretaries were gonna do that. So I'm just throwing that out there from experience, how that might work. It might not work. It sounds great,
No.
sounds easy.
It's both and, okay? We have to have both and, all right? Because many people will just go online. And if we only had phone calls, they'd all go to phone calls.
No, and I appreciate it. I'm just concerned that there are gonna be parents that aren't necessarily gonna take the time to go online.
Yes.
So how do we capture that info?
100%, yep.
But thank you.
Kathy, can I?
Keith,
So,
Keith has a question.
this
Sam.
was, I just logged on to the Gloucester website you just mentioned. So you're collecting data. Who's in charge of that data? Is there?
So that data goes to 2 places. It goes to our, Persian was a contact tracer. Now she won't be a contact tracer. We're not sure what we're calling her. Her name is Kaylee. Call her Kaylee. So she has access to it. And then our nurse.
Callie.
Wait,
Sorry, but it's
Callie.
Callie.
Sorry, Callie, Kylie. So just those folks, yep.
Team.
Nurses and our one contact tracer.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, if people are gonna be concerned with giving out their email. I mean, like, that's, I guess, sort of.
They have access to that by law.
Yeah.
Those, and then just those folks do.
Okay.
Yep. And we also, in one of the forms, we're telling them specifically, that we're not doing that. The website on this is, meaning Everyday Matters has been updated but not launched. And I did give out the URL right now, and so Keith is there, but that's not, it's not publicly out there yet. So.
Sam, you have a question?
More just a comment. I think this is great. My only concern is, well, 2 concerns. That they might change due to availability, the kind of test, right? And so I don't know if you have any insight on that, if they're gonna consistently have the same kind of test, or if it will remain the same. So there's just that, and you don't have to have the answer to that. I'm just putting that out there because I think that's gonna be hard for parents to adjust if necessary. I know from my experience, my daughter is way more flexible letting somebody else do testing than me. So I think parents are gonna struggle convincing their kids on Fridays to do that. And so we might be providing a little bit of extra help to parents on encouraging their students to do it. And then lastly, my daughter's preschool had a QR code last year that was super helpful and easy, and I just scanned it and I would put in the information that I needed to put in. So I don't know if that's something, I know that's going in the opposite direction of tech savvy versus non-tech savvy, but I do think for a lot of people to be able to just scan the QR code to get right to the website, that might be just another additional
So that's helpful, Sam. Where was the QR code to like, where was it to scan? Was it on something?
just had it next to my door. So they just they printed it and
Yep.
they needed it for everybody. And I just pinned it next to my door and it was there. It reminded me that that's what I had to do. I actually had to do it every single morning last year. It's just a symptom check-in. So just as another additional resource for people or a way to access it easily.
Yep, so that's helpful, because for right now, we're putting all the communication out in the next 48 hours, digitally, because that's the way to get out fast. But we will follow families with paper as well, an announcement in the backpack sort of thing. And that's a perfect place for that, for a QR code like that is on the paper version as we go there. So we'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was a good suggestion.
Bill?
Oops, yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, at some point, the system's not perfect. There's plenty of flaws, but at some point we have to trust the parents and say, or give them a little bit of responsibility, say, if you're testing your kids, you'll figure it out. Go to a website, looking in the data, and that's basically it. I'm not talking rocket science here, we're just trying to get the data, and what I am interested in is, to Laura's point, is what percentage of what we can do to raise that percentage of people that are taking the at-home test. And that's, I think, on us to help promote that, and really schools to do the same, and say, hey, this is important, this is what we're getting rid of. In lieu of that, this is what we need you to do.
Yeah. And I think it's really important, just how, as parents, our parent body, our families, to also be communicators.
Yes.
Because just like Melissa said, kids don't always listen to their parents. Parents also listen to their peers, and so to have parents out there, all of you, first of all, through your networks and social media or otherwise, but also other parents say, we're doing this. Have you signed up? Here's the link, and the more we can get that community type of communication, it just amplifies and amplifies and extends whatever we can do. So I think that's the more we can develop that notion of having, pardon the use of the word viral, communications.
That's a good use of the word.
Kind of like that. Yeah, kind of like that.
I like it.
That just helps get the word out. So anything you folks can do, and then your network can do, and you can tell them, support them in doing that. But that's very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
Just one last thing. So, we're, thank goodness, on this down, our people matters going down and all of that. I'm hoping that the state, we don't know it's going to stay down. We don't know what's coming, I know you can't predict this, but, I guess my hope is that the state and their, by extension, that we will be able to move and change as needed, right? Like this feels very reasonable right now. And then,
Yeah, and I think what Jeff said already, which is probably one of the most important things tonight, is we're gonna keep close eyes on this, and if it's a classroom, we'll get in there and figure it out, and then we can rapid test. We'll have tests everywhere, right?
Right.
So we can do rapid tests like we did at Beaman, or last year we did in some classes, but the interesting about that is like we had like call in the mobile testing unit, last year. Now we can put it up in a day, and so we've been really good, Jeff and I, in tracking those things, asking the principals what's going on in this classroom. We can still do that. That is why it is important. And I think I have a lot of faith in parents to report this. Folks haven't kept it to themselves. They've called up, that sort of thing. Nurses and secretaries, they've told folks. We often, when we were using Maven, we often found out before Maven, it was even in Maven, right? So, but we have to keep vigilant. We have to keep looking at patterns, and then we'll act if necessary.
and I think what Jeff said, I just want to, Jeff, what you said about when you were going through doing testing today, that the majority of the kids who tested positive were those with symptoms. That's a useful piece of information, right? It sort of tells me as a parent that all these sort of, symptomless kids are likely not passing the virus, or, it sort of says there is some correlation between, Jeff as a nurse, the nurse leaders, what he's seeing in the schools, and,
Right.
sort of what we know. So that's very helpful.
Melissa?
It's kind of a procedural question, but, so these tests are available to all staff.
Yeah.
So are you considering every single person that works for the school a staff member.
Oh, yeah, every single person.
So custodians,
Yes, absolutely.
substitute teachers
Yeah.
that come in.
Yeah, if they're, you know, if it's the first time someone showed up, probably not, but if it's someone who's just regular, we have
It's
lots
like,
of.
yeah,
regulars,
substitutes are used on a
Like-
regular
like-
basis.
Like, for example, Joe Favazza, substitute at Old Mailing apparently today or yesterday, okay? And, for the first time. And, but I'm not sure he warrants a free rapid test quite yet. He's gotta do a few more times before he wants one. So, you know, so, yeah, so, but no, when I say all.
Yeah,
you know,
I was just curious.
But they just have to sign up, you know, and so that's what we're doing, and at this point, it's custodians, you know, food service, and we'll be communicating tonight with, you know, certain like transportation.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about today that transportation doesn't have a real connection with the O'Malley front office, you know, whereas the IT guys who there do.
Yeah.
You know, so we'll develop, we'll send, you know, say IT folks who work at O'Malley sign up. They'll get theirs through the O'Malley office, but we'll send a different package down to, you know, Lori Francis and Cameron there, you know, for the transportation staff, you know,
Okay,
to make it as easy as
Thank you.
possible, that sort of thing.
yeah, just want to make sure that we didn't get any complaints coming forward from any personnel that they didn't know or get at.
Yeah, all means all here, and we'll have the test available, and as long as people sign up. Okay. Wait, Kylie wants to say something.
Okay, go ahead.
I think something that I want to bring it back down a little bit because we're talking about a lot about, okay, pool Monday, results Wednesday, shipped Tuesday, test home Friday morning. In the reality of a life of a Gloucester public school parent, I have 2 fully vaccinated kids who both participate in pool testing and will enroll in this program. So that means my kids will be tested in school on Monday, and then they will be tested at home Friday morning. So if you put that into perspective of someone who was not part of a contact tracing scenario, which very likely there are children who have never had to, you know, have that. Your child is getting to be tested twice a week. So they go into the school week being tested, they go into the weekend being tested. That's something that has never been offered before. And it's something that is easy to enroll in, non-invasive, and offers options of the pool testing at school, which is a little bit public. And a lot of kids and parents have some concerns about that. And then the at-home rapid testing on Friday, which has an element of privacy. And I think a lot of the older kids, that is going to be a really big draw for them. And they're testing Friday morning. So that gives them, in theory, a few days, you know what I mean? And then we're testing them again on Monday. So it's sort of this continuous cycle of safety for our children. And I don't want the beauty of that to be lost on, you know, the program details and all that, because we'll figure that out. We'll get that to work right. But having that, it's unprecedented. So I'm super excited about it.
That's it. Well, let's start.
Just one quick one. What's your confidence level for the accuracy in regards to false positives and negatives for antigen tests that they use?
I can't speak to the exact numbers of science behind that, but we know, and we're very familiar with the fact that the rapid antigen tests have been shown to get more and more accurate as we've gone along. When we first began, we first had the option with what became the Binax test, we first had the option to do that, to use them in October, November of 2020. We chose not to at that point because it was pretty clear to us at that point they didn't have a track record. They didn't have, they hadn't been used enough to have any real data on their accuracy. But at this point, whether it's the Binax one we use for our in-school testing, or now these the iHealth ones, they've been used so much, and so there's really good data on their accuracy. There are false positives and false negatives. Because that we used to have a PCR follow-up at rapid antigen, but at this point, that's not the common, the conventional wisdom or conventional guidance. So I don't know the exact numbers, but I think we're operating that it's very, very high. And you know, it's not perfect.
But that's why you do a PCR pool test on Monday morning.
Well, very exactly right.
So then you have a
right.
PCR that, you know.
Yeah, that combination actually is really, really rich. And I wish we started with what Kylie said, because Kylie did a great job putting perspective. This is not, unprecedented, and it is a tremendous advantage for our family and our staff. For all the reasons she just explained. And as I think you all said, Kylie, and I really appreciate it, it's like, we can figure out the details, we're gonna figure out these details every step of the way for 2 years now, or almost 2 years. And I just have a complete confidence in our team. We've executed at the highest level, whether it was over in school at, a year and a half ago, or test and stay, working at the kinks out, and our folks just do a tremendous job on it. And I expect the same. I expect we'll do the same in this too.
Thank you to all of you.
Right.
And this would have been helpful if it had been mid-December that they wrote this out, right?
Yeah,
Before the-
but
Because more people would have been informed.
yeah, no, I think that's right. And what's amazing, still amazing, and I think this also gets lost, is the vaccines are developed incredibly quickly. These tests have now they're more and more readily available. I mean, just the changes that all of this has been through is just in one sense remarkable, in one sense just not to be believed and awful. But we certainly, like I said before, learning and adjusting and going forward. Thank you, Kylie. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Okay, so we will move on to the subcommittee reports, and we have 3 building and finance subcommittees on January 11th, January 13th, and January 26th, and Melissa and Sarah Prince will
Give you the short version.
the short read.
So with regard to the meetings of January 11th and January 13th, the notes that I took, which were pretty extensive and detailed, are on my island at home and not with me here. So I am going to highly suggest that you watch the Zoom meetings if you're interested in all the detail of those departments. I can tell you once again, that I am so beyond encouraged and satisfied with the level of detail and presentation from our staff in all the departments. I mean, each one just outdid the one before, but at the same time, we're all equally awesome. So there's no doubt that we have good leadership in our department heads. I think those first 2 meetings, we met with the elementary schools, special education, English learners, the high school, O'Malley, and IT. And a lot of detail came forward. Like I said, I can't express enough that if you are really interested in the budget that you will be building over the next 4 months, and you really want to have an informed opinion and on those budget priorities, to watch the Zoom meetings, because even a report from myself wouldn't give you all the detail, or the detail that you would want to know if you were truly interested. And I can say that about tonight's meeting as well. So tonight we met, and it was the first time that the budget was pretty much dropped in our laps, as far as we heard from all the department heads, and the superintendent and Gary and Cody, and I'm sure many others worked on this budget, and gave us the first sight of it and what it could look like, or what it will look like, from a very high level. Not a lot of detail, but we discussed we talked about the financial sections, which talked about salary adjustments and a budget summary. Just a little bit of detail, I'm not going to go into a lot of it. We talked about insurance and dental insurance will likely go up approximately 6%, or that's what we're going to budget this year, because the trajectory has been about the same over the past years. There was one year that they went down a little bit, but then there's another year that it was a little bit higher. So the average was approximately 6%. And we're going to go with that number until we know more detail at the beginning of March from GIC. So that's a budget impact. We talked about the GTA salaries, and that impact is approximately $1 million to the budget. We knew one of our priorities was to retain personnel and pay appropriately. So through those budget negotiations, to discuss the main changes and be able to impact the newer teachers coming in and recognize the work that's been done for teachers that have been here longer. That impact to the budget is approximately $1 million, and we'll be talking about that at some point too. We talked about the budget that we have, and then we have the ESLR budget. So we're kind of operating with two different budgets. We have the ESLR budget that we will have this next coming year and the year after. You heard tonight from Amy Camp, all the wonderful work that's going on just with the social and emotional part of it. And we've hired some positions that are in place this year, which we've heard how extraordinary they're being. Well, to be proactive going forward, we will be, what's the word I'm using? Integrating those salaries into this budget that we're now developing, so that in 2 years from now, we don't have a big cliff in fiscal year 2025 with all the positions that we are utilizing right now. And we may not keep all these positions, but we know the 4 that we are integrating into next year's budget are a definite high priority. The detail in that is on the meeting as well tonight, if you want to read what each individual position is. So next year we'll capture those positions into our general fund as opposed to the ESLA grant that will be going away. We had a great talk about out of district transportation. We talked about how the foundation budget and the circuit breaker money is going to look like for the next coming year. We talked about professional development. Some of it is being shifted to the ESLA grant. But the overall impact to the budget for next year was, I think, 350 million,
1.35.
350, which is an approximate 2.96 budget impact from last year, including insurance. And that number could change a little bit. There's going to be a little bit of adjustments. But if you hear and watch those meetings and learn about what we actually have for support in our schools now to address all these needs that are coming at us quicker than we would want them to, especially because of COVID, we are doing tremendous work for our families and students through this budget in a good way. And knowing that our budget increased over the year, we've had the goal of trying to stick with, we have Proposition 2.5, knowing that taxpayer money can only go up that much every year. We're trying to stay in that range. And I think at this point, they've been very successful in keeping that range. And when you hear all the detail and see all the detail to that budget, when the superintendent gives this presentation to all of us very soon, you're going to be very impressed with what is happening in our school for our families and our students. So watch the Zoom meetings. And that's all I have to report. This is so much more of it, we would be here all night long.
That's why we have subcommittees.
Exactly.
Have the more detailed information. Okay. There is no action for tonight on the agenda. So discussion, other communication, all the new business. I don't think there's much to report on these Gloucester Veterans Building Committee because
I did drive by today.
Me
and you can-
too.
And you can see the foundation is above ground now. All the cement they've been pouring for the last month and a half or so. And as we said before, February, which is next week, we'll be starting to erect steel. So that's a pretty big deal, actually.
They'll be starting to what?
Erect steel. Steel will be going, yeah, going up.
I was amazed at how big and wide it is lengthwise.
Yeah, you can really see you can see the footprint.
You
now.
see the
Yeah,
footprint,
very,
yeah,
very
it's
clear.
the pictures, and I was very
Right.
impressed, like,
And it-
there's a lot of good going
Right.
on.
And it actually looks like the shape that's been on the drawings, which is probably a good thing.
that's a good thing.
And it was very active, the big trucks were moving and everything,
Bring young kids too.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was fun.
Big stair tucks. Okay, I just have a couple of things I wanted to mention. One, I wanted to make sure people notice that we do not have a school committee meeting on the school vacation week. But we do want to have one on March 2nd, the following week, to keep our meetings manageable as we go forward and to take care of business, you know, in shorter meetings instead of having, you know, a marathon meeting the following week. I think it's helpful for the administration that comes to the meetings, the people that present to have our full attention. And there's some, you know, important presentations that are going to happen over the course of March. So this spaces them out. So we'll have a meeting March 2nd, March 9th, and March 23rd, maybe, or whatever.
Yeah, that'd be right. Yep,
Whatever
yep,
it takes.
that's right.
Okay, second thing is, I've been asked by Counselor Gilman, the council president, to consider joining the city and the city council on a resolution to advocate for continuation of kind of this hybrid remote model of meeting, which according to the current dictate, it's going to expire at the beginning of April. So maybe along the way, somebody, you know, who makes those decisions might extend it, knowing that these meetings have been helpful and accessible to a lot of people. And maybe it's still need more time before the public can actually join some of our meetings. We're not going to change our format. We've been doing hybrid for a long time. But I'm going to send that to you folks to consider and just read through between now and the next 2 weeks, and we'll gather some information and we'll talk about it next time. There's nothing is overly time sensitive right now on that.
Did they vote it already?
Not that I know of. No, I don't know what her timing was. But I know in terms of just in general, it would be nice if there was the ability for the public to participate in our meetings remotely, no matter where we are, and to also continue recording our meetings and broadcasting our meetings now that it's you know, like just a much more participatory way of including the public.
Well, two things up to that point. I've signed on to it as the mayor, and I think it's important that even after COVID's long gone and finally dead, that we continue with at least Zoom, the Zoom option for public participation.
Yes.
So if panels are meeting in person, boards and commissions, that's great, but the ratings are through the roof. You know, so it should continue. And I just, if I could move on to a different topic, just Madam Chair, and we had our first meeting, chair, vice chair, and myself, Samantha virtually, and Kathy in the office. And the first of many, we're going to try to do this at least every twice a month. And then, as I mentioned before, quarterly with the president, vice president of the council. But I thought it was a great opportunity for us to talk about different concepts of where we're going and where we can go as a team. So I don't know if you want to add anything to.
No, it's just a, you know, good way to kind of talk casually about things, nothing, you know, nothing overly operational and nothing policy, but just, you know, what's going on and how do we just have a casual and build relationships so there's communication in case things can get headed off earlier. Or I think Jonathan used to meet with the mayor when there was a real reason. And even though Jonathan did have outreach to everybody, but there wasn't a regular communication, and particularly with the new mayor. I think it's good to have some background along with Jill Cahill was there as well as the CAO. So Jill brought up a lot of good things about communication, which I thought was nice that the city is thinking that the schools, you know, could really benefit from, you know, some better communication or kind of piggyback on some of the efforts that the city is making. So, you know, things like that, they can do, and if they're willing to help, it would be awesome to have resources or whatever that might help us amplify how good we're doing in schools and what's going on, or even just people with certain expertise that we might have better access to. That's all I have. Does anybody else have any other things in business that they want to bring up? Yes.
Mayor, I don't know if you were able to, the pesticides question, I don't know if there's been any movement on whether the DPW getting back to us on what the policy is around pesticides in our school building.
You know, that's a good point, because I have not heard back, but I'll follow up with them, see what's going on.
Thank you.
that bill still active or is it long gone by now?
I don't know. I think at this point, it's just come.
It's just information.
Now it's become
purposes.
information because the Board of Health wanted it, you know, before they advocated for that, but then after doing the research, they did the research, the Board of Health. And I think it's good information for us to update and be aware of. Close the loop and not overly stressful for everyone. in the process.
Okay. So,
Motion to adjourn?
Second,
Maria, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Earhart,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
and Ms. Weason. Yeah.
Yes.
Kathy. Oh,
Okay. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for those who attended and watched our meeting. Hopefully you enjoyed Amy Camp's presentation.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Sam.
Good night.
Later.
She's not available.